Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's conversation, The Future of the RCS Compliance Ecosystem. My name is Samantha Carrera. I am a marketer at Telgorithm, and I'm just here to kick things off. I'm very excited to be joined by two people who are deeply involved in helping shape the future of business messaging. Firstly, we have Aaron Alter. He is the CEO and co founder of Telgorithm. If you've ever joined these events before, you have seen him speak here. And we have a special guest today, Saransh Srivastava. He is the product manager of RCS Onboarding at the Campaign Registry. As RCS business messaging continues to gain momentum, we're getting more and more questions about onboarding, compliance, verification, and what it actually takes to operationalize RCS at scale. Today's discussion is designed to help answer some of those questions and provide insight into where the ecosystem is headed next. So, whether you're already exploring RCS or just beginning to evaluate what it means for your business, our goal is for you to leave today with a clear understanding of the opportunities, the requirements, and the considerations that are ahead. If you have questions during this discussion, please feel free to use the chat feature in Zoom. And with that, we can go ahead and get started. Aaron, Saransh, thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for setting this up. As always, greatly appreciated. You guys do a phenomenal job at this, and this is super important for the industry and for our audience. Um, and thanks to Ranch for joining us today. I just want to mention one thing off the top here. Just we're coming off 5 years of Telgorithm, and RCS has been, around what people perceive or the industry perceives to be for a while now. And it's not that Telgorithm has not been closely following that and closely on top of that, as we have been with 10DLC throughout the many years. However, for us, we wanted to make sure that we are going about it in a proper way, as we've done for the many years on 10DLC, which has paid off. And I am proud to say and happy to announce that we are now part of this now, because as we will hear from Saran shortly, the industry has moved towards this in a meaningful way, where it now makes sense to start getting involved in this and provide this in a proper way to the industry. I'm also proud to say, and I'm happy that we've been able to foster a relationship throughout the years with the Campaign Registry. As those that have tended in the past know, that for the past many years, we've hosted many leadership at the TCR, and we've been very close, working tight in hand with them, and that is going to continue going forward. That said, Saransh, if you want to just give us a brief overall of, for those that are joining, who is the TCR? What is the TCR? Particularly how it got started in regards to 10DLC, and then maybe also discuss a little bit about where it is today and some progress that's been made.
Of course. Thank you for having me here, Aaron.
Of
And
course.
that it's a very exciting time right now for RCS, because it's been there for a while now, and suddenly we have started hearing about the momentum that's coming up. So very excited to be here. So just to take it from the top, I know a lot of folks on the call might already know about TCR, but TCR is the 10DLC registry in the United States. That primarily means that we are the registry of the brands and all their 10DLC campaigns in the United States, with all the messaging parties on our platform, including the CSPs, the CNPs, the DCAs. And it's primarily driving to also provide the entire ecosystem with some visibility and oversight of all the 10DLC campaigns and messaging that's happening. Um, that being said, coming to the second part of this, when TCR was founded, I particularly wasn't a part of this. I joined around 3 years back, but our mission has always been to simplify the access of A2P messaging channels to the entire industry, including brands and the CSPs. That's what happened with 10DLC. When we got brands in, we got CSPs and tried to get the channel started. And at the same time, it's that same mission that has actually brought us to RCS today, when everyone in the industry has started moving on RCS. We primarily, our goal is to also drive this adoption by building tools to help the CSPs and these brands to onboard and participate in the RCS ecosystem, and just flourish the channel.
One of the things I always like to say is that TCR, based on my understanding, is the glue that puts it all together. As you know, there's so many different aspects and different players in this industry, some of which we'll touch on in a bit. But I like to think of it as the TCR is the glue with all the players in the ecosystem that puts it all together and tries to keep things in a neutral way, but also at the same time works with all of these players to consistently look for ways to streamline things and make things easier. Although sometimes initially it seems that things are more complex, that's actually not the intent of the TCR. It is to work within the confines of the guidance that's given by, for instance, the network operators, and while working within those confines, making things much smoother.
Absolutely. And there's just so many players in this ecosystem with different entities having different roles. In every messaging channel that comes in, that starts with a lot of fragmentation, and then we finalize and get some processes in place that actually standardize the process and tries to make it simpler.
Awesome. Moving on. Next slide. That's it. Thanks for that overall introduction. As we all know, and again, for those that are joining now, know that the TCR is kind of that glue that puts today the 10DLC aspect of things together. A question for you today, and the reason why we have you here, is what is TCR's role in regards to the rollout of RCS business messaging? As we know, it's all much hype. There's a lot of interest around this right now, and to some may have thought until now, wait, TCR is on top of 10DLC. Where's TCR, or are they going to be part of RCS? So if you could describe to our viewers, where does TCR see itself as being involved in this at all? Why have things seemed to have been delayed on the TCR side in involvement, which I already know is not true, but kind of give the aspect of where does TCR see itself in regards to the rollout of RCS business messaging, and specifically, what is your role and how does it relate to that specifically?
Absolutely. So let me take it from the top. So RCS as a channel just provides significant opportunity for brands and their customers to drive messaging and engagement. RCS comes with rich features like carousels, rich cards, call to actions, and app-like experiences within the channel. And because of that, we have started seeing that there's a lot of interest from the brand that has started to see adoption of RCS because of these primary features. And in addition to that, RCS also comes with verified branding, which increases brand trust amongst customers. And so, having all of these, we have seen that recently RCS has started taking a lot of traction in the United States as well as globally. While it has been in the market for a long time as the protocol, it's kind of getting streamlined with Google coming into the picture and all the different MNOs starting to adopt RCS in a more standardized manner. And because of that growth, we are seeing interest in the brands. And um, one important aspect to this is that there are a lot of onboarding challenges right now because it's a new channel, and specifically, it's primarily for what we have seen as for the SMBs and the mid-market brands. And that is because they don't have a direct relationship with the DCAs who have access to RCS from Google, as well as they don't have access to Google directly. And because of that, there's a lot of fragmentation and onboarding that is there. If you work directly with DCAs, there are different processes on DCAs, and that makes it very difficult for the brands to actually tap into RCS. And that's primarily where TCR kind of fits in, where driving from what we had in 10DLC and driving from the relationships we have in 10DLC, we are kind of uniquely positioned in a place where we have the CSPs, the CNPs, and the DCAs on board. And so our unique position primarily is can help us build those tools where we can provide ways and frictionless access in a more standardized manner for brands and the CSPs to actually onboard to RCS and share their RCS campaigns to a DCA who can finally do the onboardings um, to the MNOs or even Google directly. So I think that's where the 10 DLC playbook kind of translates, where our role becomes uh, very uniquely positioned for helping everyone in the industry to provide and get easier access to the channel itself. And I and that's and my particular role here is primarily to build those features and functionalities and those tools that our existing CSPs, our existing brands on the platform can just directly use and get ready for RCS and start sharing campaigns with a DCA who is partnered with Google and the MNOs to provide RCS.
And
Um,
have you noticed of recent, thank you for sharing all of that. And have you noticed of recent, because obviously there's a trajectory, the same thing with 10DLC. It took many years to kind of streamline things, because there are so many different players and there's so many different guidelines and they're always changing and they're dynamic. What do I need to share, to get registered and so on and so forth. And so anytime we have a rollout of this nature, especially of a technology like this, obviously compliance is going to be a big part of that because we want to keep this new channel clean. In the situation of 10DLC, it was more of a situation we had to clean up a channel. Here we're kind of creating a net new channel, so why not start off with the base layer of 10DLC already being in place and continue to expand off that to make sure that RCS business messaging is rolled out in a proper manner so that everyone can cleanly take advantage of all of the amazing, cool new features of this new technology. And so of late, have you seen that those factors that are needed to get, I know that we're going to discuss them in a moment, to get across the finish line or to become registered or verified, have you seen that, although there are, I know, delays still and things are still being worked out, but have you seen progress, particularly of recent in many of these areas where you see things likely heading to a place where things will be smoother in the near future?
Most definitely. I think all the MNOs, the verification authorities, Google itself, everyone is trying to make the process as frictionless as possible. And again, learning from the existing 10DLC channels, a lot of these verifications at the base level are very similar in 10DLC. And once those verifications are completed, there are some additional checks that happen on the RCS ecosystem. So it's kind of building onto what is already there. And building those up is where we are leading with RCS. There definitely RCS as a channel has a lot more um, compliance that will get attached to it, primarily because you can send rich media, you can send images, and you have logos and banners, etc., of a brand that are attached to it. So there are a lot more checks that are being done, but it is primarily building onto that baseline that 10DLC also created as a framework. So yes, and everyone is trying to remove that friction, try to build processes that are faster so that people are able to adopt much more easily. And that being said, TCR is not an RCS registry in the United States. So our primary goal is to provide that framework wherein we can just add on to those additional verifications and just enable these CSPs and brands to be able to be ready for RCS and share that information with the DCAs.
Awesome. Moving ahead. Speaking of the various different players, can you help us decipher some of what's going on here? Obviously, the audience that's familiar with 10DLC already probably recognizes some of these that apply likely for RCS as well. But it's also possible some of them are applied differently. If you can walk us through some of this.
Definitely. This is a very interesting slide, and I think I really enjoy talking to the entire ecosystem about this because there's just so many players that come together to make a messaging channel work that it's fascinating. So on the core of it lies the MNOs. MNOs are the most important part because it's the MNOs who own the messaging channel, just like 10DLC, just like any other channels. It's the MNO service. So RCS is owned by the MNOs, and you can see it's the
MNOs
AT&T.
being mobile network operators, or what we have on this chart is the carriers. I just want to decipher it for those that have joined here that may not be aware, but keep going.
Absolutely. So it's the AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile who are the carriers who are actually owning these channels. And the underlying technology provider for RCS, which partners with these carriers, is Google. So RCS as a channel, as a technology provider, is brought to the market by Google. Now, Google and the MNOs work with particular messaging companies who are called the direct connect aggregators, who are a few select few number of aggregators like the Sinch, Infobip, and the Cineverse, which get access to the provisioning for RCS on the Google's platform. And these DCAs either directly work with their brands to send messaging, or they work with other messaging companies, wherein we see the connectivity partners, we see the CSPs, who are actually talking to a lot of other brands in the market that provide these messaging channels. So on a connectivity level, everything will start with the CSP when the messaging starts to flow. Goes to a CNP, it goes to a DCA, and then it is delivered to Google or the MNOs to finally be delivered to the device. And in addition to the messaging chain, there is important role of a verification authority here, wherein who verifies which is the brand that's doing the messaging. It verifies what is being sent, including the logos and the banners of the brand, and it verifies the campaign itself. So right now, there's Aegis as the approved verification authority in the United States. All verification authorities need to be approved by the MNOs. So right now, it's Aegis in the US. And in addition to that, it's the TCR is basically the orchestration layer that we are building, wherein we would like to help these brands and CSPs get their verifications in place, where we get the verifications from Aegis, and also then pass these down upstream to the CNPs and the DCAs, so that the campaign finally reaches to Google or the MNOs. So this is how the ecosystem functions.
Nice. And just to, double click on some of this here, because I'm trying to contrast a little bit for the audience about what is kind of parallel or parity with what's required for 10DLC. As we mentioned before, there are some additional things, but for the reasons you mentioned that are required on RCS, just want to double click on some of these here and what their roles are. So the campaign registry itself, my understanding is, even with 10DLC, doesn't actually validate or verify anything in and of itself. If you share, like for instance, creation of a brand, you're partnering with different agencies that actually do that verification, to at least just verify the brand itself. Then on top of that, you then have DCAs, right? DCAs are partnered with the network operators. The network operators give the guidance, and then the network operators then require the DCAs to kind of hold the line and make sure that everything is compliant to their standards that they agree with on the MNOs before they activate things, and then they are given the control, meaning the DCA, to actually activate it. But what's different here also is Google, right? So in a typical 10DLC environment, and correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here, Saransh, in a 10DLC environment, it's essentially, for instance, Telgorithm CNP shares it with the DCA. DCA has the relationship with the network operators. There's no Google involved here. Here, there's an additional layer. Well, while the DCAs are going to handle these messages via some infrastructure, there's the Google aspect that's involved, but the carriers are also still involved as well. Can you touch briefly on that shift in dynamic here? And does it matter in regards to compliance or turn up of RCS here in any meaningful way? And if it does, what does that look like at a high level?
Um, it definitely is different from the 10DLC ecosystem because, in the SMS ecosystem, you have the gateways of the operator, or, one of the companies that the operators are working with, where you deliver the message, it's a standard protocol, it's sent. With Google coming into the ecosystem, the gateway is primarily Google. So the DCAs deliver these messages to Google. So at the same time, whenever we are actually talking on a compliance level, there are some requirements that the MNOs want to MNOs historically have seen as very important to have. So those requirements need to be aligned with also Google, because they are also capturing certain information for the messaging to be sent. And since it's the Google's platform that is sending out the message, it's very important that Google is also adhering to the MNO guidelines, so that to keep this ecosystem safe. So it's now the onus does not just lie on the DCAs to, while it still does, where the DCA is responsible for all the messaging. It's also Google that is also responsible to see what's being sent and ensure that the channel is not getting spammed or not getting any scam messages. So
I see. One of the things that's interesting here, at least when I was first exposed to RCS, the way that I thought about it particularly in this industry, there are obviously many layers to compliance, and they could be viewed as complex. And there's a tendency for many players in the ecosystem, all the way down the chain to like even a brand itself, to try to skip a path, right? I'm just going to be a single brand, and I'm just going to go to a DCA directly. I'm going to eliminate the CNP because of potential bottlenecks that they're perceiving without understanding the reason for each player in the system. And so the tendency is, which is understandable, it's complex. I want to be able to create, a product-led setup, and I want things to be very streamlined. you know, Person commonsensical would think, hey, just eliminate some of the barriers here and it'll go faster, which is not the case here. When I initially was exposed to RCS, I thought, wait a second, Google is basically the technology. They're the RCS, as you just mentioned, provider. Why do I even need to deal with, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile? I'll just become a Google business partner myself. I'll integrate with them and finish, I'll be compliant and I'll just work it out with them, and then everything is good to go here. However, as you know, that's not the case here, because at the end of the day, think about the device that you're receiving the message on, right? Who is the carrier of that device? And while the technology of RCS is built by Google and managed by Google, at the end of the day, the end user device that you're using to receive that message is likely with one of these network operators. And therefore, that requirement, while true from logistically, the path is a little bit different than 10DLC. The reality is it still ends up on the end user's device, and A2P, or business to business or business to consumer messaging, therefore has its own guidelines, and those therefore need to be abided by properly for RCS. Is that a proper way to be thinking about this?
Absolutely. It's at the end of the day, the consumers are customers of these network operators. So when I receive a message, I'm getting it in my messaging app. It is coming from T-Mobile, uh, my operator, and at that point, it's actually T-Mobile who will actually enable me for an RCS message to deliver. Without their enablement, Google will not be able to deliver these messages. So that's why I said that it's primarily operators who own the channel, and at the end of the day, also drive all the compliance and requirements that are required for a brand or anyone to use this channel to send messaging to their consumers.
Got it. And even to the point you mentioned before, because you would think, well, wait a second, new technology, and it might seem initially like, oh, it's even tougher because it's more stringent in some ways than 10DLC. But the reason that you already alluded to earlier is simply because this is a more beautiful technology with much better things than texting 1.0, we'll call it, had, like things like seeing if somebody's typing, delivery receipts, different analytics. You're getting be able to put in banners, logos, carousels, all kinds of things that will be meaningful for many businesses, especially in an age of AI today. How this really feeds into that as well. So with those additional features, obviously sets up an area where, unfortunately, a bad player could potentially have more areas where to park their ideas. And the idea here is that it's not we're trying to be tougher as we roll this out. It's more of there's more things that are involved here, and therefore we need to make sure that those areas are compliant. Would you say that that's a proper characterization of what's going on here?
Absolutely. It's brand impersonation is the ways that the brand impersonation can happen on RCS is higher, and that's why there's also a higher level of compliance required. And it's the higher level of compliance also leading to a higher level of engagement that you can also derive from customers. So it's a beautiful channel which will require some additional compliance.
Awesome. Moving on. So now, like, speaking of which, I look at this, right? I'm a brand or a CSP, and I'm like, wow, what is all this? I thought, I had already had it under control with 10DLC already, and now I'm seeing this. So walk us through this for those, first of all, that may not be familiar, but especially for those that are familiar with 10DLC setups, and kind of call out here the path with the background that we just gave right here on what's essentially going on here and what's really addition into what's required for 10DLC versus RCS. If you could just give us kind of a lay of the land here.
That's yeah, absolutely. So our process is highly modular. As you might have seen in the 10DLC process, we always start with the brand. So the CSP comes to the platform and registers the brand. So that's the first step that you see, that the brand gets registered. Now it deviates a little from the 10DLC process, wherein a brand is required to complete an RCS vet on the platform. It's similar to the external vettings on our platform that we have additionally, but this RCS vet primarily ensures that this brand meets the highest standard of vetting to ensure that they are allowed to do messaging in RCS. The RCS vet includes some additional
One
checks.
second, I might interrupt you a bit on this just because
Yeah.
for purposes of clarification. So apologies in advance. Really quickly on the brand side, if I'm familiar with 10DLC, is it that this is, let's just say there's two questions that are related here. One is if I'm building a net new brand, is and I'm going to be using this brand for an RCS campaign. I may also use it for 10DLC, but I'm going to use it for RCS and I'm creating a net new brand. Does that verification that currently happens on 10DLC, whatever that is that the same here, or is it a different vendor? Is there a different requirement here?
So,
Go ahead.
So the brand has the same. So when a brand gets registered, it has the same vendor. Aegis does our basic identity check. That's the same check that also happens for RCS. So the registration is the same when you do add a brand. And on the platform, we allow a brand to register. They can do 10DLC. They can onboard RCS campaigns. So it's a very single registration that we have, where the brand can do SMS and RCS both. And once this registration is done, and in fact, if you have brands that are already registered on the TCR platform, you can just do the additional RCS vetting that is there for getting access to RCS itself. So if there's a net new
Meaning
brand,
there is additional step, whether you have a 10DLC brand already, or you are creating a net new brand for RCS, there is an additional step on the brand vetting side that's required versus 10DLC. Is that correct?
that is correct. And that is the
Yeah.
second step on this screen, which is
Okay.
the RCS vetting. So the RCS vet is required for a brand. Either you create a net new brand or you have an existing brand. This RCS vet completes the 2FA process, and it additionally has certain legal and financial checks of the brand. So, and some additional checks that also is done by Aegis, who is our vendor. So, and a VA for RCS. So that's the next step that you do once a brand is registered, the net new step of RCS vetting.
Got it. And really quickly, I'm going to ask a dirty question here is what is the typical timeline for that? So I would say brand has gotten, I think earlier on, it was a period where it was fast. When I say fast, even within a few minutes to a day or maybe 2 days. And then at some point it got longer and then it shortened up. If somebody was curious today, as far as timeline goes, is that more of like an automation between you guys and Aegis where unless there's any red flag, it should be fairly quick? What does that look like right now?
The RCS vet itself is an automated process between us and Aegis and internally at Aegis as well. However, it does involve a 2FA component where they send a message to an email to the brand, and the brand has to confirm that uh, they are participating in RCS. And that 2FA component brings in that timeline difference. A brand can complete it in a day, it can complete it in a couple of days. So as soon as that is completed, the RCS vet will be activated. Um, and so it's the 2FA component. And unless there is any red flags, as you mentioned, Aaron, which will fall back to a manual check on the Aegis side, this is a fairly automated process on the RCS vetting.
Got it. One thing to point out here that I'm hearing is, so currently today, if I set up a brand for 10DLC, because there is no 2FA requirement for the brand itself, outside of some edge cases, maybe sole prop and things, or test RFP campaigns, there's not generally, as far as I know, any 2FA requirement on behalf of the brand. At most of our customers, or our customers are essentially ISVs or CSPs, meaning they're not the brand itself. They're registering on behalf of the brand. So meaning to say that they'll require a little bit more involvement at the beginning where the CSP is going to need to be in close touch with the brand in and of itself to confirm that they got the 2FA message versus on 10DLC, that part of it, at least for most of the use cases, is not required. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct. In 10DLC, we have Authentication Plus, which is required for public profit brands. which works in a very similar manner.
Right?
Um, but yes, it's absolutely right that we have to be very close with the brands to ensure that they complete the 2FA faster.
Awesome. Continue here.
Yeah. So the next step, once a brand is vetted for RCS, is a new verification that we need to do, which is the brand asset verification. In this, we verify with Aegis, of course, the logo and banners of the brand. So when a message goes out for RCS, there's a logo of the brand that is attached, and there's a banner image that is attached. Very similar to, well, if you see your LinkedIn banners, etc. But this is a brand
Ye- Yeah.
side of it. So we need to ensure that this logo and this banner is actually matching the brand. It correctly represents the brand, and the brand has the right to use of this logo and the banner image. So that's where comes the brand asset verification, where we have a system on our platform where you can upload these logos, these banners. We do upfront checks to ensure that they are in the right size, they are in the right dimensions, and the right file type that is required by the onboarding for Google in the future. But once we check everything is correct, we pass it on to Aegis. Aegis does all the verifications for these images, and we receive the result and pass it back. So and this is a step wherein you can add multiple logos, multiple banners. The brand might want to have a different logo for a Black Friday sale, for example. So you can add all of those together and submit it for verification. And once the verification is done, that's when you move to your next step, which is actually creating an RCS campaign.
Got it. And one other thing to a point here, again, because folks might be wondering, wow, this is an additional thing that I didn't have to worry about on 10DLC. Why do I need it? And actually, this is the way that I translate this is into a benefit, because you might think, well, why do I need this banner? Well, think about the end user. Right now, if an end user receives a random text, hopefully it's not random, but even if it is, it's just showing a number, right? And if you don't have that number saved, it could be a short code, it could be toll free, it could be a 10DLC. You have no idea what that is, meaning it's more likely, even if it was somebody that you wanted to receive a message from, you simply don't know who they are. And so you might just reject the message, you might delete the message, you might not even open it or go into it. The advantage of this is there's no number. While there is a sender ID in RCS, there's no phone number. Instead, it's your actual banner. And not only that, to this exact point, because your banner, in order to end up there, actually has to be verified. I know as the end user, when I receive this message, one, I see this banner, it's Verizon, it's CVS, whoever it is. And two, I know this is verified because it couldn't have been said here without going through this process here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's primarily building that brand trust. And it leads to that verified check mark that you also see while you're sending those messages. So once you receive a message from RCS, there's actually a verified check mark that you see with it, which gives you the confidence in the brand and increases that brand trust. So that's primarily tying down to why all of these assets are being verified.
And really quickly, the brand verification, the brand asset verification, who's doing that? Like here we discussed with the brand itself is Aegis. Is this the DCA? Who's actually doing the brand asset verification?
This is also Aegis who is doing the brand asset verification right now. We pass it to the verification authority, and they complete all the checks based on the guidelines that they have.
And what is the timeline on that one?
Again, this is an automated check. And if it falls back to a manual process, then it takes longer. But if it's automated, it can be done within a day.
Great. Moving further.
Yeah. Once all of these verifications are done, your brand is actually ready to be used on RCS. You have logos set up, you have your RCS vet done. So now you just have an option on the platform to come in and create an RCS campaign. It's very similar to your SMS campaign. In fact, on the workflow process, you just click add a campaign and then choose RCS as a channel instead of 10DLC. During the creation of that campaign, we capture multiple sets of information. The first part is we capture all the information that's required to create this agent on Google once it goes to the DCA or the campaign on Google. So we get all that information that is required to create this campaign. In addition to that, we also capture additional compliance related information that helps upstream parties to ensure that this is something that they want to accept, and it just makes their process easier. So we capture additional compliance information that is primarily very similar to what we capture for 10DLC today, and it just gives more visibility to a DCA right now. So
So in this regard, from a campaign creation perspective, if I wanted to say, hey, is this pretty much parity with what I do today for a 10DLC campaign? Is that mostly the same at this point?
it is mostly the same at this point. Yes, we create the campaign with all this information, um, and yeah, I would say it has parity in the process level.
I will point in one thing. We are launching conversational messaging on RCS, which is something that is, as you know, a big thing that people have wanted and a big advantage of RCS. The reason I'm pointing it out here briefly, well, I'll touch on it a bit later before we part ways, but the reason why that there is an impact here is in the TCR for RCS creation, there is a section called billing, and where you choose either conversational or non-conversational. And that's actually, my understanding is, where ultimately you would inform upstream if we hit the conversational requirements, which have some requirements for the session to start, it will be billed as a single session versus a per message basis there. So I did want to point that out. As far as I understand in the flow, that the part of the flow, it's first you choose your region, then you choose your version of billing. If you choose to have conversational and be part of session-based billing, which I would say has many advantages. And then from there is when you would then start choosing your use cases. Is that a proper assessment of how it works?
Yes, it's exactly how it works. In the US, we have conversational and non-conversational. It used to be earlier split into basic and single message and conversation, but it's now just two categories. Con and conversation and non-conversation are priced differently on the operator level, and that's what is passed down to the messaging ecosystem. So yes, conversational would probably have a lot more advantages because there's a channel that actually is driving a more conversational experience itself, and that's what is being incentivized as well.
And really quickly, just a follow-up question, because this is all new. One of our team members actually had a question of, if I chose the billing for conversational, but ultimately the use case is not per se conversational from a compliance perspective, does the actual use case after you choose that need to truly be conversational? Or it could be technically any use case that, as long as it gets triggered ultimately by the things that are needed to trigger to make a session, that's good enough. Meaning, from a compliance perspective, it doesn't matter if it's non-conversational or not. If you choose conversational, it's just to incorporate that portion.
I would say it on a compliance level, it is more on how the DCAs treat this, honestly, because we capture that information and pass it to the DCAs. But there is no difference as per my understanding. And as long as the entire campaign is compliant, choosing how you want to build that campaign on a conversational or non-conversational is not a compliance attribute. It's more of a billing attribute on what you prefer to be doing. If you're doing single messages on a conversational level, then there might be higher charges as well, possibly because, everything is starting a conversation window when a P2A message comes in, versus a single message. So it's important to choose the right use case to ensure that you're not charged for the wrong use case that you're using for. But on a compliance level, I would say it should be all right as long as you're compliant with the overall messaging as an
Awesome.
ecosystem.
Walk us through the rest here.
Yeah. Then once you create your campaign, it is very similar to 10DLC, wherein you share the campaigns with your upstream partners. So the CSP can share it with the CNP, like Telgorithm here. The Telgorithm then shares it with the upstream DCAs. Now, once a campaign reaches a DCA, that's where the process changes a bit. Here, when a DCA accepts a campaign, they have to perform a couple of tasks off the TCR platform, wherein they onboard this campaign onto the Google platform in their Google accounts, and then they request for this campaign to be launched on the MNOs that you have selected. And once that happens, then the DCA comes back and confirms to us that this campaign has been requested for launch. There is also one additional small step here, that once a DCA accepts a campaign, it is also pushed to Aegis for one last verification of a campaign, which primarily creates a signature that defines that this campaign has this brand and these logos attached to it. And that signature becomes a unique identifier to ensure that it's the same information that's actually being delivered. So there's a small verification part once the DCA accepts it, and then the DCA can do their necessary onboardings to Google and to the MNOs.
And at this point, is that fairly smooth? Once you've reached this point in the process, is that fairly quick?
Oh, it is fairly quick. This is an asynchronous call, but it is an automated verification that happens, and then it is passed to the MNOs for final approval. And most of the DCAs have this automation set up with Google, of course, for creating these agents, for submitting them for launch. I think the only thing here that matters is the MNO approvals, and as soon as they are approved by the MNOs, these campaigns are live, and the brand can start messaging.
Got it. Anything else to point out here of note before we move on?
The last thing is that the CSPs, as our communication channel has always been set up, it can always update the MNO statuses that they receive off a campaign, and which is communicated back to all the parties. So you know when the campaign goes live, you know if the campaign gets suspended or terminated by an MNO, or what, or even the reasons in case they want to suspend it, so that you can fix your campaign and send it again. So all of that communication happens in a very similar manner. But this
Got
is
it.
driven by
Gotcha.
the DCAs at this point.
Awesome. And I love the aspect of the visibility aspect. Again, a big advantage of being directly partnered with TCR as a CSP. You're going to get access to all of this.
Yeah.
Moving on. Cool. That said, I know we've walked through kind of all the pieces here. If you had to point out here anything, again, particularly differential to 10DLC, as brands and even ISVs are preparing these brands, or CSVs are preparing these brands, what are the top things that they should think about as they begin to prepare their brands for RCS?
Of course. So on a brand level, it's very important to capture the brand information that we already have for 10DLC. It's the same set of information that identifies that brand. In addition to that, for the 2FA, you need to add a business contact information of the brand, who can finally attest to them completing and participating in RCS. And the second thing very important is to upfront capture the logos and banner images, so that you're not waiting for verifications later, wherein you're waiting for new logos once you actually want to launch that campaign. So get those logos and banner vetted, verified up front, so that you are ready to go and start an RCS campaign. And if you have all of these things in place, you can just go ahead and start adding your RCS campaigns and sharing them upstream.
And really quickly, just to touch on here, because this is all new, right? What is something like, if I have a logo, right? What consists of, as far as you know, a logo that will likely may get rejected versus something that would get approved? Isn't a logo just a logo of your company? What's the verification aspect of that?
The verification aspects of that includes that the logo needs to be representative of the company. That means it needs to be a company logo, or one of the logos you probably would have trademarked, or you could have had as common law. It needs to be representing. It should not be owned or trademarked by any other company, to ensure that your brand has the right of use to these logos and banner images. It should not have any, I would say, funny things inside the logo banner, which could be non-compliant. It should not have any uh, silent watermarks. Silent watermarks or something that is hidden in the encoded file itself. So all of those are very important things to ensure uh, a, a safe and actual logo file actually is delivered to the customer.
Got it.
And
But for the most part, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, in addition to that, on our platform, you will be actually able to, we have an emulator functionality where you can select a logo and select a banner to see how it actually looks in an RCS. agent together, and that really helps a brand to know, because a lot of times uh, the banner and the logo image need to work together to show the correct branding. Sometimes the banner image would be such that uh, something might get cut because of the logo being overlaid, and things like those. So we have that emulator, so you can always check which logo and banner work together before you even submit that for verification.
And is that needed for a beautification or a compliance perspective?
It is more on I would say it's more on a beautification level, but also could hinder compliance in case some important information is being hidden, um, being on an overlay. But I would say it's more on keeping the branding consistent of the brand.
Got it.
Otherwise, again, the once the users start interacting and they see all of these, then it's the brand image that can get impacted.
But if overall I have a well-known brand, like I'm a plumbing company or something like this, and I have a logo and a banner, most likely there's not going to be an issue there. It's where, you're running into great ears or something is just a little off, where really that's where this, I would imagine, this may become an issue.
Yeah, and the verification actually does the entire image being verified. It's just on the device of a user you will see that overlay happening, but on a verification we
Got
verify
it.
all the entire image itself.
Got it. And then any comment here on any of the statuses that you're seeing here?
We keep all of these statuses very consistent with all the external wettings that we have, all the brand wettings that we have for 10DLC, so that there's no deviation from what we are already maintaining. So it's very easy for users to adopt these new verifications, and these are our standard statuses that we have for all the different wettings on our platform.
Awesome. Moving on. RCS Fallback and how important is it? So I'll just preface this one on why we are surfacing this, and just want to get your quick perspective on this. And that is, I think there's some perception that I could just go away from 10DLC or toll free and just completely use RCS right now. And then maybe RCS has maybe a little bit lighter compliance, or I could just completely do away with that. And our understanding is that, first off, RCS has not been fully adopted completely by every single software and every single device, and it's going to take time for that to happen. Meaning to say that most likely, my understanding is at least 50% of devices or something in that range today don't support RCS messages. And therefore, if you send the message to such a device, it's just going to fail, which will probably cost you money, and not to mention the disruption to the business. Meaning to say that a fallback strategy, ideally to a 10 DLC channel, but also even toll free or short code, needs to be in place proactively. Meaning you can't just say, I'm just going to set up RCS and that's the end of it, unless you have a very limited end user use case where you already know specifically every end user, which most don't here. Would you say that that is a safe analysis of where things are today, and that therefore fallback is required? And on top of that, this is the reason why within TCR in and of itself, as it builds out RCS setup, there is an option in there for just that in and of itself, to create a 10 DLC or to allocate or point it to a backup campaign.
Yeah, definitely. While fallback is not mandatory, it's an optional field on our platform. It is highly recommended to have a fallback. Just as you said, there are a lot of devices that are enabled with RCS today, but RCS as a channel itself is working on IP messaging, which is working on internet protocol. So your device needs to have an active internet connection to receive those messages. So we've seen that a lot of brands primarily have a fallback mechanism for RCS, and that's primarily because if your customers are not reachable by over internet and the delivery fails, you can always fall back to the SMS channel. Associating those campaigns on our platform, associating the 10 DLC with an RCS campaign is primarily just giving that additional context to the DCA so that they know that this campaign is the fallback and they have similar use cases. They are being used for the same purpose. So it helps them drive compliance more easily. So I would say that associating an RCS, a fallback campaign, kind of gives you a benefit of RCS. At the same time, the reliability of an SMS delivery.
Right. Essentially, one of the points I wanted to drill down on here is that the reason that a fallback is required here, Again, to your point, is because it's not fully adopted everywhere else. But more importantly, the fact that it is required, it can't just go, to anywhere. It's got to fall back to, let's say, a 10DLC number, which has its own specific requirements, right? It's got to match the brand, it's got to match the use case, and even the throughput. As we all know, on 10DLC, there's specific throughput that gets allotted to brands, T-Mobile or campaigns for AT&T and so on and so forth. And therefore, all of that has to mesh together. And so therefore, even if you're starting out, even brand new, let's just say you don't even have 10DLC, again, end user devices, not all of them are supported. You're going to need that fallback channel, either 10DLC or toll free, which again are very similar here. And you're going to have to make sure to set those up in advance here. Anything else to add on this one?
No, I think you covered
Okay,
it all.
awesome. Couple of things as far as on the CSP model. Over the years, we've had a lot of questions of, because particularly on 10DLC, as we all know, there's a reseller model, and many vendors out there are doing this to, make this simpler for the ISV or the CSP. But ultimately, as we know throughout the years, if you were to choose to, have a CNP become, in addition to being your CNP, handle your CSP responsibilities for you, while in some ways that might seem simpler, you're not getting a lot of things that you can by partnering directly with TCR, such as ownership, visibility, and control of your brands. And this is something that we know already to be factual, and I'm sure you know this as well. The question here is that this applies, we would imagine, to the world of RCS as well. And while you mentioned before, while it's not a requirement, just like it's not a requirement today for a CSP to go to the TCR, rather you can have your CNP handle that for you, it is strongly recommended for the reasons that are outlined here. Would you say that those same reasons apply? Number one. And number two, the way that I'm seeing it is, if you've already spent the time building all of your 10DLC within TCR and have that access, it's much easier to just, start using TCR for that as well, with the flow that you've been working so hard on building.
I would totally concur with you. It's having that visibility as a CSP for yourself, where you have the platform where you're actually seeing everything on 10DLC. Now, when you're going to your brand and promoting RCS, you are primarily also responsible for the onboarding, the verifications, the provisioning of these messages upstream as their messaging partners. So it's very important for you to actually own all of that and also have that visibility on what's the status is, what's being sent, and everything is actually provided on the TCR platform. So as the onboarding evolves in this ecosystem, it's very important to be that CSP and have, similar to 10DLC, having that visibility and control of your brands, which are your brands, and you're already familiar with all the processes on TCR. What we are primarily doing is that we are just extending our existing processes with the minimum friction so that you can adopt this. We are extending the same APIs for RCS. Just, it's the same campaign API, which will have some additional attributes for RCS, or it's the same communication webhooks that you will receive on any updates on your campaigns, etc. So you have all of these frameworks already. So that's why being that CSP will actually give you all the ownership and visibility. At the same time, it will also ensure the messaging chain is maintained, and there's more visibility in the ecosystem on who is sending what.
Awesome. And so again, just to button this one up, it's, if you're already a CSP, it's just literally just another step, which is already in line with half of the things you already built against the TCR as a CSP on 10DLC already. So it's literally right there for you versus starting over again somewhere else, by having, again, all that visibility and the control and whatever you built. That's if you're already a CSP. If you're not a CSP, I would imagine now is a great time to start, because you might already have all your customers or brands and campaigns somewhere else under the reseller, not easily migratable, because that migration only applies to CSPs because of ownership. But this would be at least a good place to start. Hey, now I want to get things in order for RCS. Good time to partner up with TCR to get this visibility, and then also work on a path to then build that fallback layer on the 10DLC side as well. Would you say that is accurate?
Yes, definitely. I mean, as being the primary messaging partner of the brand, it's the CSP also drives a lot of um, CX that the brands actually build, and that would be very similar to what is done for RCS and SMS together. So having that customer experience and the fallbacks in place and the entire workflows in place. Since it's being together, it's being done by the CSP. It's best that they also have all the visibility and control of their campaigns that they are launching. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Moving forward, the future of RCS onboarding. So, what do you? I know I touched on this on the top, but as we begin to wrap up here, where do you see RCS adoption heading over the next, couple of years? How do you see things, evolving, and what role overall will TCR play as things continue to roll? Basically, where do you see this going from your standpoint?
Absolutely. We have seen RCS as a channel for a long time, but it's suddenly taking a lot of traction. And with the standardization of processes and technology, it has just been very exciting for all the brands. At this point, we are seeing a lot of interest from brands. The larger brands are actually using RCS right now, running pilots, getting those significant results. However, globally, we have also seen benefits from large as well as very small brands who are actually engaging in RCS. So I believe in the next 12 to 24 months, as SMBs and the mid-market brands start taking over RCS, there will be a lot of broader end user adoption as well. This will enable the brands explore a lot of new use cases and workflows in the RCS ecosystem, because it just is a canvas where you can do a lot of things that you could not do with SMS. So it will actually just build on to those SMS use cases and have a lot more new experiences that you can drive with your customers. And yeah, sorry.
No, no, this is all great stuff. And from your perspective, somebody's hesitant. They say, look, I've had enough trying to get 10ELC working. I now, I've reached a base where it's working. I don't want to touch it anymore. And maybe they're excited by all the features of RCS, which are many. We didn't even discuss many of them today that are really beneficial. But if a brand is, let's just say, or a CSP is hesitant to roll this out because, hey, look, it's too complex here. What would you say to them at this point? Should they wait? Should they start on this now to get a head start on this, and just make sure that they understand, all the A to Z here? If you were that CSP, what would you say to them?
I would say that get onto RCS as soon as possible, because it's a new channel. It's smaller right now, but as the onboarding evolves, there will be SMBs who will have more frictionless processes. There'll be faster verifications. There'll be very quick time to market. So the time is now to start engaging with RCS. It will improve as we move forward. But just quoting the Jevon's paradox here, where as you make a resource more easier to use, the total adoption of the channel increases a lot, or the total adoption and demand of that resource increases a lot. And it's very similar for RCS. As you start right now, things will get easier and the adoption will scale. So the time is now to start, because there would be a lot of players who would already be starting this, and would be ahead of the curve when the boom also starts. And yes, it's been an evolving process where every partner in the industry is trying to make this simpler and easier to adopt.
Awesome. Moving ahead. And so as we begin to wrap here, first off, Saransh, thanks so much for taking the time. And I hope we could have you back sometime for an update as this all continues to roll out here. Few things to mention here, again, as we wrap here. Telgorithm now has launched RCS, and as I mentioned at the top here, while we've waited for what we believe is the right time, we believe now is the right time. And what you just heard from Saransh is that it is the right time to get started now and to work through whatever the kinks may be now, because this is accelerating quite fast. And there are many advantages of this. With Telgorithm in particular, we love to partner with CSPs on this, to make sure that they get set up and ahead of the game on this. We're one of the first to say that we've been partnering with the TCR on this process here, who we believe, just like with 10ELC and how Saransh just mentioned, will be a focal and a big part of the success of the rollout of RCS. And so we're ahead of this as we were in the 10DLC days. For those that remember here, we're excited to continue that partnership here. Another point to mention here that's unique about Telgorithm's RCS rollout, we talked today about fallback and how that is pretty much essentially a requirement today. While it's not a compliance requirement, it's essentially required to have a successful strategy simply because adoption simply on the end user side, just logistically is not there yet. And what I'm proud to announce about Telgorithm's rollout of RCS is that we're automating fallback. Many vendors today have an option that you can fall back on, but you have to proactively give them all this information in advance, which brand it's going to be, the numbers, all of this needs to be pre-set up with logics that you have to build on your end. What Telgorithm has done is we have logics on our end where we're familiar with the brand because we're partnering with TCR. We know which 10 DLC campaigns you have set up and are able to auto fallback to you in instances where it cannot be delivered. Additionally, there's also a lookup. I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm sure Saransh is familiar that there's a lookup tool that Google provides where prior to sending a message, you could actually look up an end user's number and see if today, at this point in time, can this end user receive an RCS message? We have that logic also automatically built in. So if you attempt to send an RCS message, that lookup is included in our product. It's included in the cost. We look up, hey, is this end user's number compatible? It's not compatible. Automatically fall it back to this 10DLC campaign, which has a matching brand, available throughput through our smart queuing, which manages all of that. And then on top of that, another point as well is if you do have to back up onto 10DLC from RCS, a rich media message is not the same as an MMS message. And therefore, you're going to have to scale down, for instance, if it's a picture or some template, to be compatible with 10DLC. We have used AI to build that layer into it, and we automatically do that for you. So it's kind of a 3-layer approach that you're getting without having to build all of this on your end. Number one, where we do that lookup for you on the fly. 2, we have a dedicated campaigner, know which campaign to send it from based on the throughputs in our unique patented smart queuing. And then 3, we have AI built in that'll automatically downgrade that template if needed so that it can properly be sent and received across the legacy texting 1.0 channel. This also amounts to less disruption and cost savings. In addition to that, we now also have conversational, I mentioned it on top, conversational RCS messaging. We are actually one of the first to launch this. And that means that if you meet certain criteria, we'll have follow-ups on this and what that is. It's not our criteria, it's the criteria upstream. But essentially the concept is that if you're going to converse with someone today over, let's just say, regular RCS or texting 1.0, you pay per message segment that's sent. In conversational, you simply pay for a stream. So if you hit the requirements to hit that stream, you get 24-hour period where you could send as many messages back and forth as you want for one single flat fee. And this is something that is a very big deal for those that have been in the industry, particularly in customer service, or even now with agentic AI and having things, do proper customer service. Obviously, the cost is a big factor. And sometimes there have been setups that have been less ideal because they're taking kind of the monetary into account. That is no longer the case with conversational messaging. And we're one of the first to now support this as well here. So that being said, we're proud to be ahead of this. We're proud to be partnered with Saransh and the TCR as things continue to roll out here. And we strongly would love for everyone to sign up and ask us questions beyond this. And you could click on the link that we'll be sharing here and follow up with us and try to see and give us the opportunity to experience this new and beautiful and amazing channel.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. That was an amazing conversation. I think we all learned a lot. Aaron, Saransh, thank you. We do hope to have you back for an update. That was great. And yeah, thank you, Aaron, for closing it out. You can use the link that we've dropped in the chat to learn more about our RCS offering or reach out to us. Head to our website, telrhythm.com, for more information. And that's all. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.